And welcome back to the NFLandU podcast. It's week 9 here in the NFL, right? Week 9. I'm counting correctly. Yeah, week 9. Woo! We've made it to November, people. It's November 1st, and the season's going to be kicking into high gear over the next couple of weeks. We're really going to start seeing who's for real and who's not. And I think we got a very for real performance by Jimmy Garoppolo last night on Thursday Night Football, so why not get into it early on in this podcast? Uh, 49ers and Cardinals last night on Thursday Night Football. 49ers win this one 28-25. Jimmy Garoppolo throws 4 touchdowns. 4, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4 touchdowns in primetime football to help the 49ers stay undefeated and outlast a very frightening effort by the Cardinals on Halloween night. Very, very odd game from the looks of it. Of course, Jimmy Garoppolo throws 4 touchdowns. Arguably his best game as a 49er, in my opinion, since he's been there for, 2.5 years? Jimmy Garoppolo went 28 of 37, 317 yards, and 4 touchdowns, as I mentioned like 5 times already. But it was a very odd game because Cardinals take an early 7-0 lead, riding Kenyon Drake like they did the entire night. Kenyon Drake had a phenomenal night, which we'll get into more in a second. Cardinals take an early 7-0 lead to start the game. Then the 49ers rattle off 21 unanswered points to close out the half at 21-7. And you're thinking, okay, well, this is the recipe the 49ers have had all year. They get up early, and then their defense just plays downhill and crushes teams. That didn't happen in this game. The 49ers defense looked downright beatable in this game. They allowed over 300 yards, or allowed 25 points, and Kyler Murray was making some big plays in the second half. In fact, you could really argue the Cardinals were the better team in the second half of this game. They outscored the 49ers 18-7 in the second half, and I truly believe the only reason the 49ers won this game is because the clock ran out of time. Now, granted, the 49ers were undoubtedly the better team for, the first half. The Cardinals were the better team for the second half, and I really think if the Cardinals had one more drive, they probably could have at least tied the game up. That's saying a lot about a 49ers defense that was allowing 11 points a game coming into this one, and averaging. They were like the number 1 or 2 total defense coming into this game, and they were getting beat by Kyler Murray in this offense. There was late in the game, the Cardinals are down, 2 scores, and Kyler Murray hits Andy Isabella on an 88-yard touchdown catch and run that brings the Cardinals to within 3. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, the Cardinals are right back in this thing. They just exposed the 49ers defense on primetime. But then a problem ensued. They gave the ball back to the 49ers, and the 49ers just ran out the clock. What was it, 3 minutes left in the game? They ran that entire clock out on a 11-play, 3 to 4 minute drive that had a bunch of, big plays from Jimmy Garoppolo on third down to Emmanuel Sanders to just, drain the clock, and Cardinals just never got the ball back. I really think if they had gotten the ball back, they probably could have scored again. It was crazy watching that 49ers defense, go out there and not get embarrassed, but show vulnerability for the first time all year. I really think this was perhaps, the most the 49ers defense has been pushed so far this season, in my opinion. It was very interesting to see, and I think if, teams coming up on the 49ers schedule, the Seahawks play them twice in the coming weeks, and, the 49ers are, not the 49ers, the Cardinals are literally going to play the 49ers again in 2 weeks. The Saints are also on that schedule. I think they're coming away looking at this game thinking that, they aren't unbeatable. They can, be beaten. Kyler Murray proved that, you can score points on this defense. They're not unflappable. They're not unstoppable. But I think I really think that maybe this was just one of those Thursday night fluke games that, a team comes into Thursday night, it's on the road against a division rival, and a lot of things don't look right. Defense didn't look right for San Francisco, And their run game didn't look right either. This team was averaging, close to 200 rush yards per game coming into this. And they barely got 100 in this one. The Cardinals defense came up and shut down the run game. San Francisco had a total of 101 rush yards in this game off of 31 attempts. That is not who they have been for the majority of this season. So I do think that maybe this could be the potential that, we're 3 weeks from now and look back at this game and say, you know what, it was kind of a fluke game. Or we could be 3 weeks from now and say, you know what, this 49ers defense isn't as good as it was through the first half of the season. Who knows? But I think the 49ers are going to play much tougher teams coming up. Like I mentioned, the Seahawks twice and throw in the Saints as well. So their defense is going to be really, really tested. But I think this is a sign that this 49ers team is really good, is that their defense didn't play that great. Their running game wasn't there. They found a way to win and score points in bunches. That is a good sign of a very good team. That when things are not going your way and what's brought you to the dance isn't working, you can change on the fly and still be very productive. Jimmy Garoppolo's thrown touchdowns to Pettis, Dante Pettis, I think that's his first name. George Kittle had a good night after a scary-looking helmet to the knee earlier that everybody on Twitter lost their minds over because they thought, oh, God, we're about to lose George Kittle for the year. He came back and caught a touchdown pass, so he's fine. And Emmanuel Sanders, the newest San Francisco wide receiver, played really well as well. 7 catches, 112 yards, and a touchdown. They're showing you that they can beat you through the air. Because there was a lot of talk that, if you can stymie this run game from the 49ers and force them to throw the ball, that's how you beat them. Well, you know what? The Cardinals did exactly that. They stymied the run game. They shut it completely down. And they said, okay, Jimmy Garoppolo, beat us with your arm. And he beat them with his arm. Easily. So people have pointed to Jimmy Garoppolo and said he's the weak link. He's just a game manager quarterback. If you put the game on him, he can't win it for you. Well, they put the game on him, and watching the game late, that last drive by the 49ers, it shows you Kyle Shanahan, the head coach of the 49ers, trusts Jimmy Garoppolo. He was trusting him on 3rd down with the game on the line on multiple occasions on that last drive to throw the football. And he did, and he rewarded his coach's trust. He's not just a game manager. I don't think he's like I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo can put up a stat line like this, a bunch this season. But he's showing you he's more than just a game manager that's there to supplement a run game, is what I'm getting at. But to the 49ers, I'm not the 49ers, the Cardinals' credit, they made this very much a game. Kyler Murray had an okay night. He went 17 of 24, 241 yards, 2 touchdowns. But really big news, that Cardinals offensive line only gave up 3 sacks. That's big against that 49ers defensive line that has been hunting quarterbacks all year long. The offensive line protected well. They also blocked extremely well for new running back Kenyon Drake, who had a really great night. Undoubtedly his best game of the season. 15 rush attempts for 110 yards and a touchdown. If I remember correctly, his first run of the game, he had a 36-yard run. I mean, on his first drive alone, he had eclipsed his average yardage per game that he had in Miami. He was averaging like 44 yards a game in Miami, and he eclipsed that in the first drive for the Cardinals. He was having a great night, and it sounds like Chase Edmonds and David Johnson are going to miss extended time, so, he could get even more workload for that team, which is great. I think Kenyon Drake proved that he's still, a really solid running back that can still compete. And it's weird with the Cardinals because they'll have their moments where, they look, ferocious and you can see something. You're not quite sure what, but you can see something there. It's still a work in progress, though. They'll have these spurts where they look good, like they did last night, and, going back to week 1 in that 4th quarter against Detroit where they looked good. But then they'll have these, long stretches where all they can do is kick field goals. Like they did against New Orleans, like they did against Baltimore. It's still very much a work in progress, but I think as the weeks go on, they're going to get better and better. And I'm kind of excited to see what the Cardinals will look like next year, when they know what will work and what can't work in that nature. The Cardinals are a work in progress. 49ers looked downright mortal. It was just a fun Thursday night game that I really thought would be a clunker and a stinker, but it was fun. Once again, 49ers win this one, stay undefeated at 8-0, and Cardinals take a loss, go to 3-5-1, and have lost two straight. Really fun game on Thursday Night Football. Haven't gotten to say that too often this year, but it was fun. All right, so now we're going to move into the preview portion of the podcast. We're going to talk about all the games that are happening this week. But first, I want to mention that we have a couple teams on a bye. We got 4 teams on a bye this week. The Bengals, the Falcons, Rams, and Saints. So we won't be talking about any of those teams this weekend. So let's get into it. First game up, we got the last of our London series games, and this one's going to be on early. It's I think 9:30 Eastern time, and this one could actually be pretty fun. We got the 5-3 Houston Texans and the 4-4 London. They might be the London Jaguars someday. Jacksonville Jaguars. Both teams coming in feeling better about themselves after getting some wins in. Houston broke their losing streak last week after beating Oakland, and Jacksonville's won 2 in a row. But the main question for this game, how healthy is Deshaun Watson, the Houston quarterback? We talked about it in the recap portion. He took a shoe to the face in the game-winning touchdown drive against Oakland, and they've been talking about how his eye's been healing and how it's been progressing throughout the week. They said he's been wearing a visor at practice to protect his eye, and they haven't confirmed or denied if he's going to be wearing it during the game. It's still apparently heavily swollen. I've seen some photos, and you can just tell it just doesn't look right by looking at some photos that have surfaced of him at practice or talking with the media. But they say he's good to go. That even if he wears the visor, he'll still be okay. Which is, you just hope he's okay, because you don't want this guy to get hurt. He's very fun to watch. He's so fun. I don't want another AFC South quarterback that's fun to watch to get broken. I don't want it again. But there's even more injury concerns about the Texans, because we even though we didn't talk about it, it still was a major thing that happened during their game. Their star defensive lineman, J.J. Watt, tore his pectoral in the game against Oakland, and he's out for the year. And that's a major blow to that team, because J.J. had been playing better the last few weeks. So you got to wonder who's going to step up on that Texans defense. Is it going to be Whitney Merciless or somebody else? They really could use some major leadership right now on that defense. It's been kind of wishy-washy. Kind of makes you think, I bet they wish they had Jadeveon Clowney right about now, huh? But yeah, the Texans need help on defense, especially on the defensive line, because they're playing a Jaguars run offense that has, been a bit under the radar, in all honesty. It feels like it's just climbing up the stat chart each and every week. They're now the number 5 overall rushing offense in the league, and Leonard Fournette's in the top 5 in total rush yards. He's having a bit of a career resurgence this year. But that's going to be the key. You got to stop Leonard Fournette and make Gardner Minshew beat you for the Texans defense, and it's the inverse with Jacksonville's defense. They got to find a way to get after Deshaun Watson. We said it all year long. You got to get after him and get pressure on him, and he might be a bit gun shy this week because of his eye. Normally when you say gun shy, afraid of getting hit, you would think it has to do they got a sore back, or they've got kind of a bum knee, or some bruised ribs. No, it's his eye. You can't really go after that, but he could be gun shy. We won't know until we watch him play. But the Jags defense has gotten better. They had 8 sacks last week in their game against the Jets, so maybe they get after him this week. And depending on the week is going to depend on the offensive line performance for the Texans. 1 week. No, there was a 2-week stretch where they didn't allow a single sack, and another week, they'll give up 6. So you kind of don't know what you're going to get with the Texans' offensive line. But speaking to the Jags, this is kind of like a home game for them, because they've been the most frequent team, it feels like, to go to London and host a game there. And I really feel like London's eventually going to get a team from the NFL. And I really, really think it's going to be the Jags. I really think London can support a team anyway, but this is basically going to be a home game for them. There's a surprising amount of Jaguar fans in London. They're fans of lots of teams in London, but the Jags are probably the most prominent. So it's going to be basically a home field advantage for them, and maybe some Minshew magic in London again. He played pretty well last week, and with Nick Foles coming back in a few weeks, maybe Minshew feels a bit of pressure to perform well. But because the Jags have been streaky all year, they win two and then they lose two, then they win two. I think they're going to take a loss in this one. I've got the Texans winning this one, even with Deshaun not 100% healthy. I just can't really buy into the Jaguars having to go shot for shot with the Texans and what they have. Even though Will Fuller, the Texans wide receiver, he's going to be out for this game. I don't think he made the trip to London, if I remember correctly. So that's a big blow, but they still have DeAndre Hopkins. They still have that rotation of running backs. And Deshaun Watson can make magic. It's been well documented. So I've got the Texans winning this one. Moving on to our next one, a bit of a cornered animal game. Oh, so we're going to see how this one turns out. You got the 3-4 Chicago Bears going to Philadelphia to take on the 4-4 Eagles. Oh, what a long and strange trip it's been for these two teams. Let's wind the clocks back a little less than a year ago. Eagles have to go to Chicago in the wild card round of the playoffs. It's a close, tight-knit game. The Bears defense is playing, lights out, and they're trying to just hold down the fort. But the Eagles get a late touchdown to take the lead. So Mitchell Trubisky gets the ball back, leads this pretty good and underrated drive to get them in field goal range, and out comes Cody Parkey. Yes, that Cody Parkey, who then proceeds to double doink the football off the uprights, and the Eagles win. Then the Bears go into the offseason, for whatever reason, they just keep telling themselves, if we can just find a kicker, all our problems will be solved, because they're convinced that they were just one kick away from going to the divisional round of the playoffs. So they spend the entire offseason just hyper-focused on kicking and not addressing anything else with their offense. And then they get to the season, and their offense is just awful. It's just horrifically bad. They had their first 300-yard offensive game of the season last week. They were the last team in the league to get one. The Dolphins had one before the Jets. I mean, not the Jets. The Dolphins had one before the Bears, for crying out loud. The Dolphins. So, now it's come full circle. This time they're going to Philly to play the team that handed them the heartbreaking loss. And now they're in an even darker place now because their offense is just in shambles. Their head coach is getting into arguments with people in the media. And it's just a bad time to be a Bears fan right now. But for the Eagles, they got to be feeling good about themselves. They're 4-4. They got this lackluster Bears team coming to town. And above all that, Deshaun Jackson returned to practice this week. Haven't seen him since week 2 for the Eagles. Now, granted, it wasn't a limited role, so we don't know, and they haven't clarified if he's going to play this weekend or not. But if he does, that'd be a massive boost for this Eagles offense. That deep threat can finally come back for this offense that has been, at times good and at other times awful. The Bears found their run game against the Chargers. Ty Montgomery had what felt like 135 yards, if I remember correctly, on the ground. This Eagles run defense is a lot better than that. They're averaging 90.5 rush yards per game. That's 8th best in the league. So you're going from playing, one of the worst rush defenses in the Chargers to one of the better rush defenses. So how does, Matt Nagy respond? Does he, keep trying to feed Ty Montgomery, or are you just going to trust it all to Trubisky and make him throw 50 times again? The Bears defense is going to have to come up big in this game, in my opinion. And by big, I mean they might have to score a touchdown or two. I have zero faith in this Bears offense, and I cannot stress that enough. It goes to Mitchell Trubisky, who feels like he can only play well when it's a do-or-die moment, to Matt Nagy, who feels like he's shooting this team in the foot with his coaching decisions and play calling. it's just all a gigantic cluster of things right now. And if you're the Bears, if you go in and lose this game and fall at 3-5, I'm really ready to write the Bears off at the halfway point of the season. I mean, past the halfway point. And I really can't stress that enough how little faith I have in the Bears offense. Just extraordinarily little. And the Eagles have started slow basically, every game this year, so it'll probably be a close one and it'll probably come down to the wire, in my opinion. This Bears defense isn't awful. They've just I still think the Bears defense is good. They've just been put in a lot of bad situations by their offense. And they have to find a way to score outside of the offense, either special teams or defense. But I really think the Eagles win this one. I just have more faith in what the Eagles do. But the problem with the Eagles is they'll show you something good one week, and then they'll just revert to being bad the next. It's so odd with them. I don't want to say I trust the Eagles because I really don't, but I feel like I trust the Bears less. It's more about the Bears not being in a good place than the Eagles being a better team, if that makes sense. But once again, I think the Eagles win this one. I just have less than good faith in the Bears. Moving on to our next one. What could be a knockdown, drag-out defensive slugfest in the 1 o'clock Eastern time slot. You got the 5-2 Colts. Hey, yeah, 5-2, won 3 straight. Going all the way to Pittsburgh to take on the 3-4 Steelers, who have also won 2 straight. And, I'm just seeing this on my TV right now. T.Y. Hilton is out for this game. I'll talk about, good timing. Wide receiver T.Y. Hilton is out for this game. I just saw it pop up on my TV. All right, so my first talking point was going to be the Colts offense needs to improve, but, if T.Y. Hilton's out, that's going to be a major issue for them. They were basically, right around the league average. They were ranked number 18 in total offense. That's a little below, 16 is the average. But, so they're a little below. They're averaging like 345.9 yards per game. Get Marlon Mack rolling. He wasn't really himself last week, and you could argue that Marlon Mack really hasn't been that big of a fixture in the offense lately. So you try to get him rolling as best you can against the Steelers defense. And, the Steelers defense is getting good. They're number 2 in takeaways with 19 on the year. They're only second to the Patriots. They're number 10 in total defense with averaging 336.6 yards per game. But they rank 15th in rush defense. They're giving up 103 rush yards per game. So if you're the Colts, try your best to run on these guys, and that's probably going to be an emphasis now that T.Y. Hilton's out, now that you think about it. Guys like Eric Ebron are going to have to step up. If I remember correctly, Zach Pascal, who had a big game like 2 games ago, I think, is going to have to step up again. So it'll be interesting to see, what the Colts offense can come out and do. The Steelers defense is really going to have to play good in this game, considering the fact that, their offense, isn't exactly a world beater. So to say. The Steelers offense ranks bottom 3rd in every single category. They're 24th in rush offense, averaging 88.1 rush yards per game. They're 26th in passing offense, averaging 205.1 pass yards per game. And 28th in total offense, just overall offense, averaging 293.9 yards per game. Basically meaning their offense, hasn't been good. And it's going to be even worse now because we don't know if James Conner, their star running back, will play in this game or not. He hasn't been at practice at all this week, and head coach Mike Tomlin said he felt comfortable if they only were able to use him in a limited role for this game. But we don't know if we'll even get to see him do that. But basically what I'm getting at is the Steelers defense needs to play lights out good. They need to basically do what the Broncos did to the Colts last week. Just keep them kicking field goals. Find a way to do that, and then hopefully Mason Rudolph can find a way to win this game. But I really think the Colts win this one, even with T.Y. Hilton out for this game. Now, I still think the Colts will find a way to win. They've been in every single game, and they've won most of their games by 1 score. So no matter what, the Colts are going to be in this game in the end. I just can't find faith in Mason Rudolph to, put up bunches and bunches of points if James Conner isn't out. isn't in. So I've got the Colts win this one. And you know what? If the Colts win this one and move to 6-2, let's give them some more respect in the media. It feels like nobody's talking about the Colts, even though they're in first place and have only lost 2 games. Come on, people. Give them some respect. All right, moving on to our next one. The Gase Bowl, the Adam Gase Bowl in Miami. The New York Jets, the 1-6 Jets, going to Miami to take on the 0-7 Dolphins in the Adam Gase Bowl, people. You gotta love it. Adam Gase used to coach for the Dolphins, used to be the head coach, was the head coach for like 3 years, I think. Took him to a playoff game at one point, and the rest was awful. He was let go at the end of last season and became the Jets head coach, the much-hated divisional rival of the Dolphins. Hooray! This game is interesting for a lot of reasons outside of Adam Gase. The Jets are the only offense in the league that is somehow worse than the Dolphins. The Dolphins are the 31st ranked total offense in the league, averaging 254.6 yards per game. And the Jets are the 32nd, dead last overall offense, averaging 209 yards per game. Think about that. Barely averaging over 200 yards a game. They're both averaging 11 points a game. If I remember correctly, it's the Jets that average 11.1 and the Dolphins average 11. So, hey, first team to 12 wins. How about that? Oh, this is going to be such a bad game. The Dolphins are one of the worst defenses in the league. They're number 30 in total D with 414 yards per game and 9 total sacks on the year. So that could be a big point of emphasis in this game. Sam Darnold has been under massive duress these last 2 weeks with pass rushes, and the Dolphins don't really have one. Who's their best pass rusher? Taco Charlton? And I know the Jets' offensive line has played horrifically bad lately. But if you can find a way to protect Darnold in this game, I think everything will be okay. But if the Dolphins are able to get good pass rush on the Jets, that's increasingly and incredibly alarming, in my opinion. But this is probably going to be an ugly, sloppy game. The Dolphins have been playing better these last few weeks. It feels like each week they get closer and closer to a win. And you know what? There have been a lot of whispers from people in the media that, the Dolphins could win this game this Sunday. Because the Jets are just in such a dark place right now. And I'm going to come out and say this. I think the Jets will win this game. I think it'll be very close, but I think the Jets can win this game. I'm going to back off my earlier statements that I had made like a month ago that I don't think the Dolphins win a game this year. I think they're gonna beat somebody. They're gonna beat one team this year, just one, and it could be the Jets. It could really. They're gonna get 2 shots at them because they're a division rival. So they'll get another shot in New York, and then the Dolphins also play the Bengals in a couple weeks. The also winless Bengals. So something's got to give in that game. We're going to cover that one like the Super Bowl, if they're both still winless. Once again, I think the Jets win this game. But if the Jets don't, if the Dolphins somehow pull out a miracle and win on like a last-second field goal, I think... I had mentioned it before on this podcast a couple of weeks ago that there were whispers that because of how bad the offense has been and a bunch of other things and how morale seems to just be so low that Adam Gase, the head coach in New York, could be a one-and-done head coach. If you lose to the Dolphins, I don't care if it's in Miami, I don't care about anything else. If you lose to the Dolphins with how bad this Jets team is, Adam Gase is probably going to get fired. I'm serious. He could be fired, and I wouldn't be shocked if he loses to the Dolphins. That is how bad it's been for the Jets. That a loss to this awful Dolphins team could basically seal Adam Gase's fate at the end of the year. Once again, I'm taking the Jets to win, and I think they will. But if they lose... Oh boy, if they lose, things are going to turn real bad real fast in that media market in New York. Once again, I think the Jets win, but just hold on to your butts because it's going to get weird in that game. All right, moving on to our next one. We got the 1-7 Washington football team going to Buffalo to take on the 5-2 Bills. Washington's lost 2 straight now and are back to in the basement and feeling awful about themselves. Dwayne Haskins sounds like he's going to start this game. That is not for sure because Washington seems to be holding out all hope that Case Keenum can get healthy and clear concussion protocol either today or tomorrow to play in this game. But it sounds like Dwayne Haskins is going to get the nod to start against this Buffalo Bills defense. Despite getting bullied last week by Philly, Bills still have the number 3 total defense with 303.9 yards per game, and they're averaging giving up 17.4 points per game on defense. Their bread and butter all year has been on defense. The problem has just been with their offense and what feels like almost inability to score at times. The offense specifically from the Bills really needs to play better. They're number 19 total offense in the league, averaging 19.1 points per game. I mean that's great when your defense is only giving up 17 and you're scoring 19, but you got to play better. And this Washington defense is really bad. So come out and flex your muscles. Josh Allen, come out and get 3 touchdowns. 1 rushing, 2 throwing. However you get it, just score some points, my dude. Really go out there and impress. Show people that this Bills team wasn't just good because they're playing some bad teams. But speaking to that, the Bills struggled against bad teams in Buffalo. Remember, they almost lost to the Dolphins and they almost lost to the Bengals in that home stadium. Those were games where the Bills had to come from behind late in the fourth quarter. I mean, I'm also starting to doubt these Bills a bit. So, come out and bully somebody. Come out and, throw your weight around and put some respect on your name. This team their schedule is still soft going forward, but it feels like people are starting to respect the Bills less for good reason, in my opinion, because nobody is afraid of that offense. Just come out and bully ball somebody. It's not that hard, I promise you. People have been doing it to Washington all year long. Just bully them. But the one good thing you can say about Washington is that their defensive line has been playing better these last few weeks. They have 19 sacks on the year. And I feel like a lot of them have come, these last 2 to 3 weeks. But there was a report from the Washington Post about the Washington football team, citing unnamed sources in the organization that they feel that Dwayne Haskins just has not read the playbook, that he just doesn't know it, which is very, very alarming for a first-round pick. An accusation of that he doesn't know the playbook hasn't been floated since Jamarcus Russell with the Raiders. And that was a very, very bad time if you were a Raider fan. Quick side note on that. They were finally able to prove the suspicion that he wasn't reading the playbook or was watching tape when they gave him like a DVD or a VHS of plays that they wanted him to go home and study. And he said, yeah, I'll go home and watch this. And 3 days later, I think they gave it to him over a weekend or something. He came back to the facility and I said, oh yeah, did you like the plays? And he started naming specific ones that he saw on the tapes. He's like, oh yeah, I like this, and this. But the thing is that what they gave him, either the DVD or the VHS tape, was blank. So they kind of caught him red-handed selling himself out that he didn't watch it. So maybe just pull that with Dwayne Haskins. See if he's actually studying or not. Now, I don't know if the Washington Post article, what they're reporting is true or not. I'm just saying what they're reporting. So take it for what you will. It's just a lot is going on with the Washington football team, and Dwayne Haskins has been a major point of contention. People want him to start. Other people don't want him to start for whatever reason. And, well, it sounds like he's going to start whether he knows the playbook or not this weekend. And I'm taking the Bills to win this one. And for good reason. I've been riding the Bills all year long. I think the defense is good. Their offense just needs to play better. And just bully somebody, Buffalo. Just bully somebody. It's not that hard. Come out and win a game like 24-10, and I promise you all the critics will shut up. Yeah, it doesn't even have to be like a 40-point game. Just come out and win a game like 24-10 or 24-13. Win by a touchdown or two. It's really not that hard, Buffalo. You make it seem more difficult than it needs to be. All right, moving on to our next game. I think this next game could actually be sneaky interesting. You got the 4-4 Tennessee Titans riding a 2-game win streak, going to Carolina to take on the 4-3 Panthers. The Panthers are coming off, an embarrassing loss to the 49ers where they just got, mollywopped and smacked around. So, how are the Panthers going to bounce back from, a 50-point burger being laid up on them? And thankfully they have a home game, but the team coming into town, their defense is also pretty good. The Titans defense ranks 9th in total defense with 335.6 yards per game, 12th in rush D with 96.5 rush yards per game, and they have 22 sacks on the year. If you remember correctly, Kyle Allen got sacked 7 times last week against San Francisco. And so he's coming in, he's playing another really tough defense. So how is Kyle Allen going to perform? The word on the street is Cam Newton isn't going to be in attendance at this game. He's gone to see a foot specialist somewhere else. And there was this report, I think it was Pro Football Talk who reported it on Twitter, saying that there's talk that Cam Newton's foot has not healed or progressed much lately, which is an alarming sign because, the talk like a week or two ago is that he was, getting closer and closer to playing. Now it's, maybe he isn't as close as we thought, and Kyle Allen is going to get a couple more weeks to, be the starting quarterback. Now, once again, I'm not saying that's for sure or that's for certain what Pro Football Talk is. I'm just saying that's what they're reporting. And all we can go off is the report, and we can speculate whatever. But it sounds like Cam Newton won't be in attendance at this game. So Kyle Allen, maybe, that takes some pressure off of him to just, go out there and perform against this really good defense. For the Carolina offense that we've talked about all year, it all flows through Christian McCaffrey. If you shut him down like the Buccaneers did in their 2 games, you got a shot. And, you're going to have to force Kyle Allen to beat you. Carolina, speaking of Carolina's defense real quick, they have a good passing D, but their rush defense it really hasn't been talked about, but their rush defense hasn't been good. They're the number 27th overall rush defense with 135.1 rush yards per game that they average giving up. So Derrick Henry, the Titans running back, who, kind of hasn't, I don't think he's had over 100 rushing yards the last 3 weeks, if I'm remembering correctly. So maybe he has a big game in this one and really, take some pressure off Ryan Tannehill in that offense for Tennessee. But I think, the main key for each defense is going to have to be come out and stop the running back. The Titans have to slow down Christian McCaffrey, and the Panthers have to find a way to slow down Derrick Henry and force the quarterbacks to beat them. And one of my talking points was, before I saw the Pro Football Talk report, if Kyle Allen has another bad game, does that clear the way for Cam Newton? Well, now that's out the window if Cam's foot is not, healed correctly. But I think Kyle Allen, he doesn't have to do much. He's got, some really good supporting talent around him, and the Panthers have a good defense, except for the run defense. And I think, Ryan Tannehill has been doing good work in Tennessee. Not great work, but good work. Much better than Marcus Mariota. And I just think it's going to be a slow, low-scoring, sloppy game. But I'm going to take the Panthers to win this one. I feel like I have more faith in the complete team that is Carolina than the complete team that is Tennessee. Even though my opinion of the Titans has grown each week with Ryan Tannehill being their starter, I just think that the Panthers are just a better overall team, and that's why I'm going to take the Panthers to win this one. But I wouldn't be stunned if the Titans somehow steal it off of a last-second field goal. I just feel better and better about the Titans each week. All right, moving on to our next one. You got the 6-2 Minnesota Vikings going on the road to take on the 5-3 Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. Matt Moore is going to get the start again for Kansas City. There was talk that maybe Mahomes could be healthy enough to play, but he's not. Sounds like he's going to need at least another week or two, which is insane to think about. That he's already being talked about coming back after dislocating a kneecap. But Matt Moore, the backup for Kansas City, he looked good last week against Green Bay. But the Green Bay defense is a completely different animal than what the Vikings are about to bring to town. The Vikings are the number 5 total defense in the league, average 313.9 yards per game, and they're the number 8 passing defense, giving up 224.5 passing yards per game. Translation, the Vikings defense is very good. It's probably the best defense in that division right now, especially since it feels like the Packers defense has dropped off a bit the last few weeks. But speaking of defenses, the Chiefs defense still has something to prove in my opinion. They're the number 24 total D with 337 yards per game, and they're still the number 30 rush defense with 145 rush yards per game. Now, specifically that rush defense is a problem, especially since they're going up against Dalvin Cook, the current league leading rusher who has 823 rush yards on the year so far. And he's not just a threat with rushing the ball, he's also a pretty good, pass catcher with the screens that they employ in Minnesota. So I think that's going to give the Chiefs, fits all game long. Is just trying to stop Dalvin Cook. And you know what? If they find a way to bottleneck Dalvin Cook, okay, then Kirk Cousins can drop back and throw it to Stephon Diggs. And it sounds like Adam Thielen, the Vikings wide receiver who missed last week because of a hamstring. Wait, no. He didn't miss last week, did he? No. They played Thursday night. My bad. They played Thursday night, and he left with a hamstring injury. So, now he could potentially play in this game, which would be great for the Vikings offense. Gives them another tool to kind of flummox this Chiefs defense. Head coach Mike Zimmer said there's a very good chance that, Adam Thielen could play in this game. So take that for what you will. I just think it's just too much to overcome for this Chiefs offense, even though they played pretty well and kept it close against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers offense. I just think it's too much to overcome for this Chiefs defense to just try and find a way to stop this Vikings offense. And we're going to see, is this Vikings offense, is it going to start resembling more of what we saw all throughout October? Or is it going to take a dip now that we're in November? It'll just be interesting to see. I think the Vikings win this one outright. I just have too much faith in what the Vikings are putting on the field right now and their defense. And I'm not trying to bash Matt Moore at all or the Chiefs offense without Patrick Mahomes because they played well against Green Bay. I just think it's too much to overcome. They can't go shot for shot with this offense, and the Chiefs defense really, really, really has to play well in this game. But I think it's key to think about this is, a game in a, big time slot. People are going to be watching. It's a big time game. Maybe Kirk Cousins doesn't play too well. I know people hate that narrative, but it's a narrative for a reason. He historically has not played well in big games with a lot of people watching. He tends to, clamp up and not do so well. Granted, he played well on Thursday night against the Washington football team, but this is the Chiefs, an actual NFL team. So we'll see what happens. But I'll take the Vikings outright in this one. I think they're just going to come in, lay the smackdown down, and just walk out with a W. All right, moving on to our next game. We got the 2-5 Buccaneers going to Seattle to take on the 6-2 Seahawks. Seahawks have the number 9 rushing offense in the league, averaging 130 rush yards per game. Well, they're going up against the number 1 rush defense in the league, with the Buccaneers averaging 68.6 rush yards per game. That defensive line with Vita Vea up there in the middle has just been flat out dominant. They're just crushing running backs and not letting anything go. You know how you know you're good? You stopped Christian McCaffrey from running all over you twice. That rush defense is for real in Tampa Bay. The rest of that defense, not so much. Shaquille Barrett finally got a sack again in what feels like forever, and he's up to 10 on the year. Oh, and there it is in my notes. Tampa Bay has the number 31 passing defense in the league, giving up 285.9 pass yards per game. So, big question is this going to be a return to form for Russell Wilson that we saw a couple weeks ago? Big day for Danger Russ. Get back on the MVP hunt for Russell Wilson. It'll just be interesting to see, will the Seahawks try to run the ball against this stout run defense, which is, that's what they want to be. They want to just be this run-first team that plays defense. Or are they going to throw the ball all over the yard against this really bad pass defense, which is what they should do. So it'll be interesting to see what the Seahawks do offensively in this game. For the Buccaneers, they're coming out, and their main objective should be try to not turn over the ball. They have 10 combined turnovers the last 2 games. 4 last week, 6 the week before, so just try not to turn over the ball. Is that too much to ask for? It shouldn't be, but it feels like it is. That's my main talking point for the Buccaneers. Just don't turn over the ball, Jameis. There was this very interesting story that I heard the other day that allegedly, and I cannot preface this enough, allegedly, the Buccaneers general manager, Jason Light, allegedly runs a burner Twitter account called Jameis 1 of 1, where he promotes this manifesto for Jameis Winston that he sells on Amazon for $20, and he just goes on these rants of defending Jameis Winston to people of the media. And he allegedly spends hours of his day just tweeting and ranting on social media and arguing with people. It's an insane story if it's true. Once again, allegedly, but there's a YouTube video out there that I watched where they compared the voice of Jason Light and the apparent voice of whoever runs Jameis 1 of 1 Twitter account, and they are identical. And it's just so funny that this man spends hours of his day just defending one of the biggest draft busts this decade on Twitter. It's truly amazing, and I love it. But I'm going to take the Seahawks to win this one. I thought it was a funny story worth sharing. I'll take the Seahawks in this one. The only thing I trust the Buccaneers to do is turn the ball over at this point. Seahawks win outright. You know what, Seahawks? Go win a game. Go win a game where you win by more than 7 points. Because it feels like every Seahawks game is close. Even last week against Atlanta, they took their foot off the gas after they were up like 20 points. And the Falcons came back. So go out and bully a team, just like the Bills. Go out and win by like 14 points. That's not too hard, especially against this bad Buccaneers team. So moving on, I think the Seahawks win. Moving on, Detroit. Hey, the Lions. They got a win last week. 3-1 Detroit Lions going to Oakland to take on the 3-4 Raiders, who have lost 2 straight. First game in Oakland in what feels like a month for the Raiders. And it was a month that they spent on the road. This is a matchup of 2 really bad defenses. The Raiders are the number 24 total defense in the league, and the Lions are the number 31st total defense in the league. Translation being that they're awful defenses. The Raiders give up 378.1 yards per game. The Lions give up 420.4 yards per game. This Lions defense was supposed to be a lot better than this, and they've been awful. It's just a contrast of styles. It feels like they complement each other so well in this matchup. The Raiders have the number 30 passing defense, so they're one of the worst passing defenses, giving up 285.3 pass yards per game. All right? The Lions have the number 5 passing offense, averaging 282.7 pass yards per game. So a great passing offense in the Lions versus a bad pass defense in the Raiders. But it continues. The Lions have the number 26th rush defense in the league. They're giving up an average of 130.7 rush yards per game. The Raiders, in contrast, have the number 7 rush offense, averaging, get this, 131.4 rush yards per game. So, Raiders like to run the ball with Josh Jacobs. Lions have a bad rush defense. Lions like to throw the ball to Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, you name it, they got it. Danny Amendola too. And the Raiders have a bad pass defense. So, contrast to styles, who wins this one? And not to mention, Derek Carr's been, quietly having a good year. He's been making a lot of completions. Tyrell Williams is going to be healthy. Darren Waller has been good. The Raiders' pass offense isn't as bad as, I've made it out to be in this podcast. But this could actually be a very good game, in my opinion. But I think the Lions win this one. I really like the Detroit Lions offense. They're really fun to watch throwing the ball. With first-year offensive coordinator Darren Bevel, they're really fun to watch offensively, and I think the Lions win this one. But the Raiders are a really well-coached team, especially on offense. They do these long grind-out drives that take up a lot of clock, and I wouldn't be stunned if the Raiders win this one. I really wouldn't be. I've really come around on the Oakland Raiders. They've been one of the better surprise teams of the year. I just think the Lions' pass offense is just too much for them to overcome. And I'm going to take Detroit to win this one. All right, moving on to our next one. Very interesting game right here. You got the 2-5 Cleveland Browns, who have lost 3 straight, going to Denver to take on the 2-6 Broncos, who have lost 2 straight. It's interesting because of this. Cleveland needs this game. They need it. Broncos season is over. They're done with. Cleveland needs this game. Joe Flacco is now out for the Broncos, what they're saying, 4 to 6 weeks with a neck injury. He's going to get a second opinion on it. So in comes Brandon Allen from the University of Arkansas, former 6th-round pick, making his very first NFL start in this game. 27 years old. He's bounced around, I think, the Rams, and I think somebody said the Jets. I can't really remember. Anyway, Brandon Allen making his first start for the Broncos, so you have to imagine that they're probably going to rely heavily on the run game with Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman. Not ask Brandon Allen to do a lot, but, you can't run the ball the entire game, So Brandon Allen's going to have to make some throws in this one to guys like Noah Fant and Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton's been playing great this year, by the way. The Broncos defense on paper looks good, and they're really going to have to be a big step up. They're the number 4 total defense in the league with 304.5 yards per game. But as I've screamed about almost every week on this podcast, they choke when it matters most. They've had 3 losses this season in the last 30 seconds of games. So if it's a close game and they're leading by 2 points with a minute left, you can basically chalk it up to they're about to lose this game, in my opinion. I have zero faith in them to hold on to a lead, especially now that Brandon Allen's going to be in charge of the offense. So you got a young quarterback making his very first start, and he's going to be lined up against Myles Garrett, the Cleveland Browns defensive end, who is tied for the league lead in sacks with 10. Talk about ringing the dinner bell for a guy. Basically, for the Browns, your defensive game plan is simple. Go after Allen. Especially whoever is lined up against Garrett Bowles, the offensive lineman who feels like every time he gets pressured, just starts holding and holding and holding and puts the Broncos in very bad field position. So, yeah, just go after Allen and pressure him. Force him into bad throws. He's making his first start, so, he might not all be there. He might freeze in a big moment. Who knows? I've maligned the Browns offense and, gotten onto them for being inconsistent. And they won't look good in this game. This Broncos defense can play well for 3 quarters until it gets to the 4th quarter. They can play good for those first 3. So the Browns offense is probably not going to look good for most of this game. They just need to ride Nick Chubb. Their offense is at its best when it's force-feeding Nick Chubb, undoubtedly. So that's what they need to do. And I'm going to pick the Browns to win this one. I just have absolutely no faith in the Broncos late in games. They would choke in any close matchup, and that's why I'm taking the Browns to win this. And if the Browns can't win this game against Brandon Allen, against a 2-6 Denver team that chokes in the fourth quarter. If they can't win this game, their season's over. That's why the Browns need this game. This isn't just a cornered animal game. This is a season on the line game. Because like we mentioned on Tuesday's podcast, the Browns were in the same exact position at the beginning of the year. I mean, last year. They were 2-4-1, and they're 2-5 now at this same point last season. So they can turn it around and, end the season on a good note, in my opinion. Or they can lose a idiotic game to the Broncos and just ensure that Freddie Kitchens could get fired at the end of the year. They could do either or. But I'm going to take the Browns to win this one. Win a game, Cleveland. Just win a game. All right, moving on to our next one. You got the 7-1 Packers going to Los Angeles to take on the 3-5 Chargers. Packers have won 4 straight and are feeling really great about themselves. And even though they're in LA, that's probably going to be a very, very loud Packers contingent, as it feels like it always is when whoever comes to town to play against the Chargers. Just like when they played the Steelers, there was a lot of Steelers fans in attendance. It almost sounded like a home game for the Steelers. And the Packers are one of those fan bases in the NFL that travel extremely well. So we'll see what it sounds like on Sunday afternoon. The Chargers fired their offensive coordinator, Ken Wisenhunt, Monday. So we'll see how their offense looks. Maybe a new look run game with Austin Eckler getting a lot of more touches than Melvin Gordon. I mean, they had 12 rush attempts in their game against the Bears. That's not going to cut it, especially in a close game. You got to do better than that, LA. So we'll see what the Chargers offense looks like. But Green Bay has been one of the better offenses in the league. Their stats say they're not that good, but what you see on the field is a completely different opinion. And they're averaging 26.9 points per game, and it just feels like they're getting better and better each week, especially Aaron Rodgers. And like we mentioned a couple minutes ago, the Chargers have one of the worst rush defenses in the league. They're the 23rd overall rush defense, averaging 122.8 rush yards per game that they give up. So big night for the Green Bay running backs. Aaron Jones, get back more into the running game? Question mark. He had a big game last time in the receiving category, but, go out and truck some people. And like I just said, Aaron Rodgers has been getting better and better each week. So has Aaron Jones. He had the 4 rushing touchdowns against Dallas, and he had 150 receiving yards last week against Kansas City. So will the Rodgers and Jones connection stay hot in this one? I think Green Bay wins this one outright. I just, even though the Chargers fired their offensive coordinator, I still don't think that they're going to be much different on offense. They're still so banged up and hurt. I just can't buy into the Chargers right now. They've just been one of the bigger disappointments of the year. So I'm going to take Green Bay to win this one. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's a close game, going into half or even close to the fourth quarter. I wouldn't be surprised. But moving on to our next game, Sunday Night Football, and I think this is the game everybody should be looking forward to this weekend. I literally have almost a half page of notes dedicated to this one game. That's how excited I am for it. You have the undefeated 8-0 New England Patriots going to Baltimore. Yes, you heard that correctly. Going to Baltimore to take on the 5-2 Ravens, who have won 3 straight. I'm really excited because I thought this game was in New England for most of this week until I saw it was in Baltimore. And I became almost overjoyed. Because it's in Baltimore, it increases the likelihood that Baltimore could get a win. The Patriots finally have a legitimate challenger step up to the throne to fight. The weeks where they played the Dolphins and the Jets with Luke Falk are far behind us. Now they have a legitimate offense that is competent and knows what they're doing. The Ravens are the number 2 total offense in the league, averaging 434.9 yards per game. They're number 2 in points per game, averaging 30.6 points per game. And they're the number 1 rushing offense with 204.1 rush yards per game. What I'm trying to tell you is the Ravens know how to move the ball. The Ravens know how to score. They're a problem. And they are, without a doubt, the biggest threat that New England has played so far this year. Bar none, and it ain't even close. The Pats' defense has been historic. We've been over this at length. They're giving up 7.6 points per game. But like we talked about on Tuesday, did the Browns expose a way to attack this defense? We saw what Nick Chubb did. He didn't average. He had over 130 yards of rushing against this Pats defense. I cannot stress that enough, how surprising it was to watch him run over Patriot defenders early in the second half. I was sitting there with my mouth agape watching him run for 6 to 7 yard carries. And now they're playing this Ravens offense that can run the ball with a bruiser like Mark Ingram and can hit you with this finesse, flash, and speed that is Lamar Jackson that can make any defender look stupid trying to tackle him. They can hit you with anything. And plus, guess what? It sounds like the Ravens are finally getting back wide receiver Marquise Hollywood Brown in this game. That is a massive boost for the Ravens. And so they can beat you on the ground and they can beat you through the air. They can beat you anywhere. See what I did there? Lamar Jackson's running ability is what I think can keep the Patriots off balance. Think back to the game that the Ravens played against Seattle, and Lamar didn't have a good passing day, but he had like 116 rushing yards, and watching him scramble and make Seattle defenders look stupid trying to tackle him in the rain, try to replicate that as much as you can in this game. Get him out of the pocket, get him scrambling. Hell, give him a direct quarterback snap and tell him to run. Whatever you can do to confuse Bill Belichick, the better. And I promise you, Bill Belichick has spent countless sleepless nights just staring at film, studying this guy on how to stop him and slow him down. The Baltimore defense is going to have to play extremely well in this game. They're around league average in basically all of their stats and what they can do. So they're going to have to play great. Speaking to the Seattle game again, do what you did against the Seahawks, where you just got up and bullied them and got super aggressive with them and shut them down. Do that again. Try your best to replicate that against Julian Edelman and the rest of that Pats offense. They really struggle running the ball, New England does. They really do. So try your best to go after that and shut down that run game and, force Tom Brady to throw it. Oh, God, I can already see it not working well in my head. And here's a bigger question. A couple years ago, the Ravens were always talked about as a team that could beat the Patriots with Joe Flacco and Terrell Suggs and Ray Lewis on defense. They were Patriot killers in the AFC. They really were. They were the team that could go toe-to-toe with New England and show no fear, no intimidation in a big primetime game. And could win. But that was years ago, and all those Ravens are gone now. Now it's Lamar Jackson's turn. So what I'm asking is, can Lamar Jackson be a new Patriot killer in the AFC? I think the Ravens are going to do something that no team has done all year long. I think they're going to be the first team to score more than one offensive touchdown against the Patriots. And I know that doesn't sound like a big deal on the surface, but it is. It absolutely is. No offense this season has scored more than one offensive touchdown against the Patriots. So if somebody can do it, I think it could be the Ravens. I think the Ravens score at least 2 offensive touchdowns in this game. But I think the Patriots win it. I just have too much faith in Bill Belichick and what that defense can offer you. And granted, that Patriots offense, has struggled at times. I just think they'll find a way to win. I think that defense on Baltimore is their weak point, and it's going to let them down in a big primetime spot. But the Ravens are going to give them a scare. The Ravens are going to show people that this defense of the Patriots can be beaten at times, that it's not invincible, that they're not this immortal juggernaut that everybody has made them out to be. but it's just not going to be enough, and I think the Patriots win it in a very fun Sunday night football game. Listen, the Cowboys play on Monday night, and I am more looking forward to this Sunday night football game against the Ravens and Patriots. I really think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think the Patriots win it. I learned a long time ago, you never bet against the Patriots in the NFL, and you never bet against the Alabama Crimson Tide in college football. That's my two rules. Never bet against those two teams, and I'm going to write it here. Patriots win it. All right, moving on to our last game. Like I just mentioned, Monday Night Football. They got rid of the Genesis halftime show with the bands playing, and I'm so heartbroken. I'm not. That was awful. You got the 4-3 Cowboys coming off their bye week, going to New York, take on the 2-6 football Giants, who have lost 4 straight. So here we are. Cowboys are statistically the number 1 total offense in the league, according to ESPN. They average 437.9 yards per game, and they're averaging 27.1 points per game. And that's really crazy to think about, considering this team was riding a 3-game losing streak like 2 weeks ago. The Cowboys have the number 4 rushing offense, averaging 146 rush yards per game. So new Giants defensive lineman Leonard Williams, who they acquired from the Jets in the first time ever that the Jets and Giants had completed a trade, he could potentially help with that and try to stop the run from the Cowboys on Monday night. The Giants are just a bad overall defense. They're the number 28 total defense in the league, giving up an average of 386.8 yards per game. And they're averaging giving up 27.3 points per game. So the Cowboys are averaging scoring 27 points, and the Giants are averaging giving up 27 points. So take that for what you will. The Cowboys' defense has been getting better each week somehow. It still feels like they're underperforming compared to what they did last season. But they're playing an offense that really just feels like it's struggling lately. And it's weird that they're struggling with all of this talent that they have. Daniel Jones needs to chill out on the turnovers. If he's either the league leader in turnovers or he's like number 2 or 3 behind whoever it is, and he's only played in like 4 or 5 games this season. So Daniel Jones needs to chill out on the turnovers, and that offensive line needs to protect him better. There's a reason why Nate Solder, that offensive lineman, was on the trade block Tuesday. Because he hadn't been playing well. So they need to protect Daniel Jones better. Stop letting him get sacked 6 to 8 times a game. But that offensive line could run into some havoc because now the Cowboys have a new defensive lineman in Michael Bennett. And I really don't feel like that's been talked about enough by people, that Michael Bennett can still be a guy who can go out there and wreck people. He played really great last year, and he only got traded away from the Patriots, in my opinion, because they were asking him to do stuff he didn't want to do, because the way they were changing their defense and how they were running it, he didn't like it. So they traded him after he got into an argument with the coach. So now he's in Dallas, and he can be a serious threat on that defensive line with DeMarcus Lawrence and Robert Quinn, drawing a lot of attention. Who are you going to put on to stop Michael Bennett, for crying out loud? And against the Giants' offensive line, it's been very porous. There you go. Add that to your vocabulary word of the week. Porous lately. Daniel Jones could be in for a very long night Monday night. And like I said, the Giants have talent. They have Saquon, as we all know and love. They got Golden Tate. And you know what? Darius Slayton has been having a pretty good year for the Giants. Caught like 4 touchdown passes this year, the rookie. He's been having a good year. So the Giants have weapons. It's just, it doesn't always click. And, that tends to happen sometimes when you got a rookie quarterback. I mean, Eli Manning, if I remember correctly, his rookie year, he led the league in turnovers. So, you know what? If Daniel Jones comes out and leads the league in turnovers, it's not the end of the world. I promise you it won't be. It happens with rookies. It happens. The last time these two teams played, week 1, and the Cowboys dominated that one. A couple turnovers in that one. Defense looked good, and the new look Kellen Moore offense ran up and down the field on the Giants. And we saw Daniel Jones come into the game late in that one after Eli got benched, But now Daniel Jones is playing for the full game, so maybe it could be different this time around. But I think the Cowboys will win this one probably handily. I think the Giants defense is just so bad. Just so bad. I'm going to take the Cowboys to win handily in this one. And that's all of our previews for this week of Week 9 of the NFL action. I do want to mention, because I just saw it pop up on my TV, so we're going to talk about it really, really quickly. Quan Alexander, the San Francisco 49ers linebacker, has apparently a season-ending injury. They're saying he tore his pectoral last night in the game. So a big blow to that 49ers defense. So we'll see what they look like going forward. But that is an absolute massive blow to a defense that kind of got, dunked on a little bit last night that we talked about an hour ago on this podcast. And also a quick note, it looks like, I see the notification on my phone. Dwayne Haskins has been officially named the starter for the Washington football franchise this Sunday. So there you go. Dwayne Haskins gets a start, whether he knows the playbook or not. And that's all we have for today's show, the Week 9 preview podcast. Next time we talk, it'll be Tuesday, and we're going to recap every single game we just talked about, and then we'll preview next Thursday Night Football's game. So everybody, have a good football weekend. Bye.